Hey, night owls and history hounds! Before we dim the torches and crawl inside the echoing halls of Europe's most elite brotherhoods, hit that little bell, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment telling me which medieval order you'd have joined if drafty cloisters, endless vows, and occasional floggings were part of the sign-up package. Now tuck yourself deeper under the blanket, turn the fan to that gentle white noise hum, and let's melt into the candlelit world of secret feuds no crusade chronicler dared write down. You're standing in a moon-washed courtyard of a Templar commandery, stone walls glinting like pale armor. A copper brazier sputters near the stables, and somewhere up in the dormitory loft, a novice coughs himself awake. But you're not here for nightly devotions, you're eavesdropping. Because under all the polished sermons about poverty, chastity, and obedience, the famous knightly orders fought each other like alley cats in chainmail.
First, whisper drifting on the chill air, envy. Picture the Knights Templar circa 1180, vaults bursting with silver deposits from half the crowned heads of the West. They've pioneered an early form of banking, letters of credit scribbled in ciphers even popes struggle to decode. Over in the hospital at Acre, the Knights of St. John, better known as the Hospitallers, count wounds, not coins. Their black robes with the white eight-pointed cross are stained by weeks of battlefield triage. And every pilgrim they nurse back to life stumbles out whispering that the Hospitallers are the Church's true heroes, not those money-lending Templars down the street. One order rich, the other righteous, and both convinced the other's glory is built on sand.
Fast forward a few summers, and you find yourself in the canteen of a Crusader fortress near the Orontes River. The wooden tables are carved with knife graffiti, Templar crosses, Hospitaller stars, and, wedged between them, the lesser-known emblem of the Teutonic Knights, that new German outfit still trying to prove they belong at the cool table. Tonight's stew is goat, onions, and a hefty pinch of rumor. A Hospitaller sergeant mutters that the Templars hoard relics and charge tolls on holy sites that should be free to pilgrims. A Templar marshal fires back that the Hospitallers spend more on silk bandages than on swords. Tankards slam, a dagger gets half drawn. Peacemakers drag them apart, but everyone knows the fight's only postponed until tomorrow's council meeting. And that council meeting? Imagine a tent as wide as a cathedral, flaps snapping in the desert wind. The Grand Masters sit at a long table, Templar robes blazing white and red, Hospitallers black sparkling with stitched silver, Teutonic white on black like frost on iron. On the agenda, which order gets first pick of the next captured stronghold? You think they'll appeal to scripture? But no. Legal charters hit the table, sealed by emperors, each one claiming precedence. Latin verbs swirl like arrows. One clause says the Hospitallers control all hospitals, hostels, and adjacent territories. The Templars counter with their papal bull, granting them exemption from any secular authority. Sorry, Hospitallers, that keep technically counts as an adjacent territory. Voices rise. The air smells of lamp oil and ego. When the scribe finally reads the verdict, nobody's happy, but everyone bows. On the outside. Inside, they plot. Ready for a midnight secret? Slip behind the Templar chapel and you'll hear rumors of a clandestine alliance. Templars courting the Teutonic Knights with promises of shared spoils if they gang up on the Hospitallers. But word leaks, and the Hospitallers counter-bribe the Teutonics with land in Cilicia. Suddenly, alliances flip like chessboards in a tavern brawl. To outsiders, all three orders march under the same holy banner. To insiders, they're gladiators in an arena of charters, relics, and papal favors. Let's zoom north to the Baltic, 1230s. The Teutonic Knights leave the Levant's dust for pine forests and frozen lakes. Their mandate: Christianize the Prussians. But a Templar envoy arrives, scroll in hand, claiming that some revenues from Baltic trade were once pledged to the temple. The Teutonics laugh, cold breath in frosty air, then quietly reinforce their new castles. By spring, when a Hospitaller detachment rides up seeking to build a field clinic, the Teutonics stall, citing ongoing pagan raids. Translation: go home, black robes, this ice kingdom is ours. News filters back to Acre, and every order's chancery adds another parchment to its growing dossier of grudges. Meanwhile, in European courts, abbots and bishops fuel the feud. A bishop of Chartres praises Hospitaller charity during his Christmas sermon, and the Templar preceptor, seated in the front pew, clenches his teeth so hard he tastes blood. In response, Templar treasurers anonymously fund stained glass windows depicting their own martyrdoms. Subtle propaganda shining over every morning mass. The congregation sees heroic white-clad knights face Muslim swords, while black-robed Hospitallers merely pass bandages. Message delivered. And the lay public? They gossip in crowded fairs. Did you hear? A Hospitaller killed a Templar over a water well at Margat? Nonsense. It was the Templar who robbed the Hospitaller. Each retelling warps reality until the feud grows mythic. Children in Provence play stick-sword games. One team shouts, "Temple," the other, "Hospital." Grandmothers shake heads, muttering that when monks trade swords for silver, the devil writes the ledgers. Yet, for all the venom, when the horns sound and Saracen cavalry sweeps across the plain, Templars and Hospitallers lock shields side by side. Brotherhood rekindles under fire. You can almost hear the inner monologue of a Hospitaller sergeant. I still hate those arrogant bankers, but if I must bleed, better beside them than behind them. Battle ends. Survivors limp off. And the feud? It resurfaces the next morning over ration allocations. Listen closer now. One last candle sputtering low. In a drafty archive deep in the Vatican, scribes catalog letters from frustrated popes begging the orders to reconcile. Pope Innocent III warns that scandal weakens Christendom. Yet even he grants the Templars fresh privileges, fuel on the fire. Centuries later, the feud will echo in King Philip IV's purge of the temple. He'll whisper to the Hospitallers, "Stand aside while I break your rivals." And torn between envy and loyalty, they will. But that, weary traveler, is a nightmare for another night. For now, snuff the brazier, pull your cloak tighter, and tiptoe past the sleeping novices. Moonlight pools on stone floors like spilled milk. Somewhere, a distant bell tolls none. Or is it already matins? Time warps in these corridors of whispered rivalries. Slide a little deeper into the straw-stuffed mattress you've claimed for tonight, because the torches in the Great Hall are hissing lower, and the stories that slither out at this hour have sharper barbs than any spear in the armory. Quick housekeeping before we unlock the next round of rivalries. If you haven't already, tap that like button so hard the algorithm thinks you just swung a warhammer. Ring the bell like it's a cathedral gong announcing Vespers, and in the comments, confess which medieval rumor you'd spread if you wanted to sabotage a rival order. Trust me, the Grand Masters absolutely checked the medieval equivalent of the comments section. Now, hush, the wind just rattled the shutters, and that means it's time for tonight's second plunge into cloak and dagger chivalry.
You wake before dawn in the fortress of Margat, Syria, with the taste of last night's spiced wine still clinging to your tongue. Down in the courtyard, Hospitaller squires haul buckets of water, their breath fogging the air. A Templar knight peers over the battlements, counting how many barrels of pitch remain after last month's Saracen raid. Neither says a word, but the tension between black cloak and white smock sparks like flint on steel. And looming just beyond the eastern horizon is the invisible clock everyone feels but no one names. When the next crusade fails, and it will, someone in Europe will need a scapegoat. Each order is quietly drafting its alibi. First light steals across stone, and a parchment courier gallops in, dust plumes swirling behind him. He dismounts, delivers one scroll to the Templar preceptor, another to the Hospitaller commander, then vanishes down the coastal road before anyone can unseal the wax. 2 letters, same seal of the Pope, yet the messages will read very differently. In the Templar Hall, the preceptor announces a papal call for all orders to pool resources for the defense of Tripoli. Applause. In the Hospitaller chapel, the identical letter orders them to maintain independent command of their funds for maximum medical efficiency. Also applause. Somewhere in the papal chancery, a clever cardinal is sowing mutual praise, spiked with just enough ambiguity to keep the feud alive. Divide it impera in Latin looks lovely on vellum. Breakfast is lentil pottage, swallowed in awkward silence. A Teutonic emissary, fresh off the boat from the Baltic, tries to soften the mood with a joke about German beer being stronger than Acker wine. Nobody laughs. He coughs, wipes his beard, and mutters that Emperor Frederick has promised the Teutonics fresh recruits, thousands, maybe tens of thousands, to secure the Levant. A Templar marshal scoffs that German crusaders spell disaster unless tethered to stricter rule. The Hospitaller, still spooning lentils, quirks an eyebrow. Stricter rule according to whose charter? The spoon clinks. The emissary excuses himself to inspect the infirmary. What he's really doing is memorizing corridors, counting guard rotations, filing it away for his Grand Master. Intelligence gathering wears many habits. Now follow that emissary into the infirmary. Amputated limbs soak in brine. A novice stitches a knight's torn cheek, humming a psalm off-key. The Teutonic guest observes shelves of imported spices, clove, saffron, cinnamon, worth mountains of silver back in Lubeck. He notes the seals on each crate. Venetian traders donated these to the Hospitallers exclusively. That means the black-cloaked order has trade connections bypassing both Templar banks and Teutonic merchants. He files it under future bargaining chips and compliments the novice's suturing. The novice blushes. No one in armor ever praises his work. Small seeds sprout strangest vines. Mid-morning council. A combined patrol will ride inland, skirting Muslim lines to map new enemy fortifications. The senior positions, standard bearer and vanguard, go to the Templars by ancient custom, or so the White Knights insist. The Hospitallers claim the rear guard, citing their medical duty to extract the wounded. The Teutonics are left with the dangerous center, easy target for ambush arrows.
They smile politely while cursing inside their helmets. On the march, they maneuver just a bit wider, scouting alone. Out of earshot, the Teutonic leader tells his sergeant, "If an attack happens, let the Templars bleed first. We'll rescue them later, for a favor payable in castles."
Lunch beneath a lone sycamore. The patrol shares salt fish, hard bread, figs. A Hospitaller chaplain mentions the relic of Saint Blaise that supposedly sweats oil on hot days, an omen that battles will be lost unless proper penance is paid. A Templar knight counters with his own relic, a thorn from Christ's crown that once burst into flame when a Saracen touched it. The Teutonic sergeant, not to be outdone, reveals a splinter of the true cross encased in glass, gift from the emperor himself. 3 holy objects, 3 claims to divine endorsement. You start to see why skirmishes sometimes erupted over whose relic visited a Crusader camp first. Late afternoon ambush. Arrows hiss from a rocky ridge. Templar horses rear. Teutonic crossbows snap upward. Hospitallers drop into a defensive ring around the pack mules carrying medical chests. Chaos, but no panic. These men drill for ambush twice a week. A Templar standard-bearer takes an arrow through the thigh and topples. Before the dust settles, 2 Hospitallers rush forward, dragging him by the armpits while muttering a short prayer. They bind the wound, sprinkle vinegar, hand him off to his comrades. Magnanimous, right? Yet that night, rumors spread through the fortress that the Hospitallers looted the Templars' purse in the confusion. True or not, it stokes the smoldering rivalry. Evening brings a truce flag from the Muslim commander, a basket of figs, and a letter proposing prisoner exchange. The Grand Masters gather under lantern light to debate. The Templar Master wants 3 Saracen captains for every Christian knight. The Hospitaller suggests compassionate trade, 1 for 1 to save souls. The Teutonic envoy remains silent, mentally noting which Muslim dignitary penned the letter, a contact he could leverage for Baltic trade routes. Negotiations stall. The figs rot in the basket, and prisoners languish in dungeons because honor codes must remain unsullied, even if it means men die in chains. Just before Compline prayers, a ship arrives from Cyprus bearing a papal legate. He carries sealed indictments accusing certain Templars of usury, certain Hospitallers of luxury, and certain Teutonics of unauthorized crusading against Christian Slavs. Each order immediately convenes crisis meetings. Lawyers, yes, even Crusader monks employ lawyers, comb rulebooks for loopholes. The legate smiles thinly, accepting bribes disguised as donations to the poor. For every coin he pockets, he scribbles a softer adjective in the final report. Usury becomes excessive interest. Luxury fades to overgenerous hospitality. Unauthorized crusade dilutes into missionary zeal. Corruption, it turns out, is the one tradition the orders share happily. Midnight shadows. In a narrow corridor lit by a single tallow candle, you spy 2 figures exchanging parchment. One is a Templar scribe, the other a Hospitaller quartermaster. They trade lists, one of grain prices in Tripoli, the other of sword shipments arriving from Genoa. They grin, shake hands, vanish. The feud is never absolute. Beneath the grandstanding, lesser officials barter intel daily. Feuds may divide banners, but coins still clink across color lines. Let's leap across the sea to France, winter 1291. Jerusalem has fallen, Acre smolders, and homeless orders camp in European courts like beggars in gilded rags.
The Templars establish headquarters at the Temple in Paris, fortress and vault combined. The Hospitallers relocate to Cyprus, then Rhodes, plotting naval power. The Teutonics entrench in Marienburg, carving a northern empire out of Baltic ice. Distance doesn't cool hatred, it freezes it into crystal patterns. Beautiful, brittle, razor-sharp.
French nobles whisper that the Templars' Paris stronghold is impregnable, stuffed with gold and secret tunnels. King Philip IV counts debts and twitches. His advisors fan the flame. Sire, imagine those coffers funding your wars, if only some scandal justified seizure. Enter a Hospitaller envoy, subtly reminding the king of his late brother's generous donations to their hospitals. Did the envoy nudge Philip toward suspicion? Historians debate. But weeks later, anonymous pamphlets circulate. Accusations of Templar idolatry, heresy, black cat worship. The source? Nobody knows. Hospitaller script? Papal clerks? Teutonic propagandists? Conspiracy buffet. Help yourself.
October 1307. Dawn raids on every Templar house in France. Chains clatter, torches flare, parchment warrants wave like funeral flags. Hospitallers watch from Cyprus, publicly shocked, privately relieved. Their biggest rival just got kneecapped. But relief curdles into dread when whispers reach Rhodes. King Philip's men eye Hospitaller properties next. The order scrambles, inventorying assets, relocating treasure, rewriting charters to emphasize hospital over military. Meanwhile, Teutonic chroniclers pen smug paragraphs predicting their own rise as last true guardian of the faith. Spoiler, pride goeth before Swedish longbows and Polish lances at Grunwald 1410, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Back to 1312, the Council of Vienne dissolves the Templars, transfers much property to the Hospitallers, on paper. In reality, local lords grab castles, kings confiscate cash, and Hospitaller envoys bribe bailiffs to hand over whatever scraps remain. Former Templar sergeants, now masterless, drift to Rhodes seeking service. The Hospitallers reject many, fearing spies, but hire a few to captain galleys. One such renegade nurse knight whispers intel about hidden Templar reserves buried under Paris. True? Philip the Fair tortures dozens yet never finds it. Treasure myths are birthed, and the Hospitallers quietly enjoy the rumor. If people think Templar gold remains unfound, suspicion will haunt Philip's heirs more than theirs. Meanwhile, in the Baltic, the Teutonic Knights wage brutal wars against pagan Lithuanians. Papal support flows. After all, no rival orders claim that frigid frontier. But with success comes arrogance. Teutonic tax collectors squeeze Hanseatic merchants. German bishops complain of knightly overreach. Neighboring Christian kings call them wolves in monks' clothing. Sound familiar? By 1400, the Teutonic Order faces a coalition of Poland, Lithuania, and disgruntled nobles. They beg Hospitallers for crusade reinforcements. The Hospitallers, busy fortifying Rhodes against Ottoman fleets, send polite apologies. Some friendships are seasonal. One last midnight tale before we let sleep claim you. Picture a dusty attic in Avignon. The papal library glows with sputtering lamps. A young clerk translating letters stumbles upon a ciphered correspondence between a surviving Templar cell and a Hospitaller treasurer. It outlines a plan to launder remaining temple assets through Hospitaller hospitals, then funnel them to fund a covert navy aimed at retaking the Holy Land together.
The clerk's candle gutters. Is this real? A forgery? He decides not to ask. He files the letters under Arcana and drifts off, dreaming that perhaps after all the poison, torture, and greed, the orders might unite again, or rip each other apart one final time.
Torches in our hall are near dead. Your eyelids probably weigh more than a crusader's kite shield. If hearing how these secret feuds sparked Gothic assassinations, courtroom betrayals, and a treasure hunt that still sends metal detectors beeping across Europe intrigues you, let me know below. Smash subscribe so you don't miss the next Watchfire chat. And tell me, whose side are you on? Templar traders, Hospitaller healers, or Teutonic ice warriors?
Scoot a little closer to the hearth. Don't worry, the sparks can't reach you through the screen, because the night outside just exhaled a colder wind, and every gust sneaks fresh gossip through the arrow slits. Quick ritual of allegiance. If you're enjoying these torchlit confessions, hammer that like button like you're forging a longsword. Jab subscribe so you never miss a midnight muster. And drop a comment naming the pettiest grudge you've ever witnessed. Because trust me, even holy warriors can turn minor slights into centuries-long vendettas. Ready? Good. Now let's slip past the guards and eavesdrop where the parchment truly bleeds.
The year is 1326, and you're trudging down a rain-slicked road toward Avignon, boots caked in mud, cloak soaked, mind buzzing with one mission: deliver a sealed coffer from the Hospitallers of Rhodes to the papal treasury. Officially, it holds relics in need of authentication. Unofficially, it's packed with exotic spices, pearls, and enough florins to bribe an archangel. The Hospitallers hope Rome will grant them exclusive rights to rebuild a Mediterranean fleet. But word's leaked. Rival agents sniff along the same road, eager to liberate your chest before it reaches a pontifical lockbox. Fog coils over vineyards, and every creak of wagon wheels sounds like steel drawing. Suddenly, hoofbeats, 3 riders in plain wool, but the way their hands hover near sword hilts screams professional. You tighten your grip on the coffer's leather strap, whisper a psalm you barely remember, and prepare to die for a box you've never opened. Except death gets postponed. An arrow whistles out of the vines, skewers the lead rider's shoulder. Chaos erupts. You dive into a ditch while the remaining 2 wheel around, scanning for attackers. A dozen bowmen in mismatched cloaks emerge. Bandits? No. Their leader flashes a Teutonic cross stitched tiny on his glove. Knights of the German Order have ambushed knights, maybe of the Temple? No, those are gone. Regardless, arrows fly, horses scream, and you crawl through brambles clutching the coffer like an infant. One stray shaft thunks into the wood, narrowly missing the contents. Another catches your cloak, pinning you to the earth until you rip free, leaving a ragged souvenir for whoever wins this roadside melee. You stumble downhill to a riverbank, hide under a rotting boat, and wait while shouts fade into the drizzle. When silence settles, you peer out. 2 bodies float beside the reeds, one Teutonic, one unknown merc. The coffer is still yours. Congratulations! You've just survived the medieval version of corporate espionage. Night in Avignon. Papal city smells of incense and wet limestone. You limp toward the Curia gate, but a Hospitaller liaison intercepts, bustling you into a candlelit cellar beneath a vintner shop. There, senior brothers inspect the punctured coffer, fingers trembling, not with fear, but with rage. A German rival dared violate holy cargo on French soil? The commander scribbles a coded report to Rhodes, curls wax over the seal, and mutters that this insult demands an appropriate reply. Perhaps an embargo on Teutonic grain shipments routed through Hospitaller ports. You're sent to an attic with brandy and a blanket, told to forget what you saw. As you drift off, you notice the commander hasn't unpacked the chest. He knows the real treasure isn't gold, but leverage. Skip east to the Baltic Sea, spring thaw, pine scent mixing with salt. In Marienburg's stone halls, the Teutonic Grand Master reads a different report. Theirs claims Hospitaller couriers tried bribing local merchants to spike German wine with resinous pitch, tarnishing the order's trading reputation. Outrage choruses around the long table. A marshal proposes retaliatory raids on Hospitaller galleys in the Aegean. Too far, too costly. Instead, they'll weaponize reputation. Send chroniclers to European courts whispering that the Hospitaller's medical mission is a front for piracy. Scribes sharpen quills. Lies will travel faster than any galley. An elderly canon coughs into his sleeve, reminding them that the true enemy remains pagan Lithuanians. The table falls silent, righteous purpose momentarily recollected, then resumes plotting. Even Crusader zeal must coexist with brand management. Meanwhile, the Templar ghosts still haunt Europe. Though the order was dissolved, pockets of fugitives survive, sheltered by sympathetic nobles or hiding as lay brothers in remote monasteries. One such outlaw, Brother Anseau, gray-bearded, eyes bright with revenge, wanders western France preaching that both Hospitallers and Teutonics betrayed the temple. He claims to hold secret ledgers proving bribes exchanged before King Philip's arrests. Crowds in taverns lean closer. Conspiracy sells better than miracle tales. Word reaches Avignon. Papal clerks dispatch Dominican inquisitors to silence him for sowing discord among the faithful. Enter you, once courier, now conscripted into hushwork. The Hospitallers quietly hire you to locate Anseau first, not to kill him. He's too charismatic. Martyrdom is marketing, but to steal his documents. You trek to Limoges, tail the preacher into a barn-turned-chapel. He thunders about false monks hoarding widows' coins while children starve. After midnight, you slip into his quarters, rummage through saddlebags, find parchments inked in Templar cipher. Before you escape, Anseau's awake, dagger drawn. No time for theology. You throw a lantern, flames explode on straw. Chaos, shouts, you bolt through smoke, clutching scrolls that could shatter what remains of chivalric PR. Back in Avignon, Hospitaller codebreakers decipher the texts, half accusations, half delusions, but one page lists castle inventories transferred from dissolved Templar holdings to specific French lords. If the Vatican learns nobles kept treasures instead of donating to new crusades, political earthquakes follow. Hospitallers debate, reveal the info and destroy rivals, or keep silent, trade secrets later. Ultimately, they lock the scrolls in a cedar chest under Rhodes' citadel. Blackmail is wine, best matured. But storms brew bigger than petty dossiers. Across the Mediterranean, Ottoman beyliks consolidate. Hospitaller fortresses in Asia Minor topple one by one. Teutonic envoys watch gleefully, until news arrives that the same Turks court alliances with Lithuanian princes against Poland, threatening the German order's flank. Suddenly, the foes need each other. Rhodes, 1345. Delegates from both orders gather for a council of mutual defense. You promoted to scribe ink proceedings. Opening prayers drone polite, but beneath benedictions slither old grievances. Hospitallers present maps showing Ottoman fleets. Teutonics counter with sketches of Lithuanian siege engines. Each order argues its war is the true crusade deserving Europe's coin. Voices rise. A Hospitaller brother cites biblical charity. A Teutonic knight quotes Roman law. A Franciscan observer quotes nobody, just smirks. Break for supper. Fish stew and sour wine. You overhear side deals. Teutonic quartermasters negotiate for Rhodian timber. Hospitaller sellers inflate prices outrageously. Donation rates, they call it. Timber shipments will arrive late, thin, riddled with beetles. Still, the Teutonic sign, better beetled beams than none. Final session, they draft a joint letter to Pope Clement VI requesting unified funding. Sounds cooperative, but a monk drafts two versions, identical except the Hospitaller copy places its name first, the Teutonic copy does the reverse. Each envoy sends his preferred document by separate ship. Whichever vessel reaches Avignon first frames the narrative. Maritime propaganda via courier wind speed. That's medieval public relations. Now shift to London, plague-scarred 1350s. The Black Death has culled a populace, emptied treasuries, and left knightly orders scrambling for recruits. English nobles host lavish tournaments to distract from mortality. Hospitaller and Teutonic representatives attend, each parading foreign feats. Hospitallers boast of naval victories off Bodrum. Teutonics display captured pagan banners. Between jousts, squires trade rumors. Teutonic garrisons riddled with heresy. Hospitaller hospitals secretly charging fees. Satirical ballads circulate. One verse depicts a Hospitaller surgeon amputating wallets before limbs. Laughter is a dagger. Reputations bleed. A young English knight, dazzled by both orders, seeks admission. Teutonics promise land grants in Prussia. Hospitallers promise salvation defending Christ's tomb, eventually once they reclaim it. The knight hesitates. Each order gifts him tokens, a Teutonic wolf head brooch, a Hospitaller's silver cross. He pins both, igniting whispers he's a double agent. The poor lad merely wanted adventure. Feuds draft innocence effortlessly. Let's open a darker chapter. Espionage by sacrament. Paris, 1362. A Teutonic friar disguises himself as a Dominican confessor in a Hospitaller priory. From the confessional booth, he coaxes secrets, shipping schedules, treasure locations, even internal dissent, under seal of absolution. He forwards intel through coded psalms mailed to Marienburg. Months later, Hospitaller convoys are ambushed with uncanny precision. Suspicion blooms. The prior hosts a dinner, invites local clergy. Wine flows, tongues loosen. The impostor slips, mixing Teutonic liturgical slang into his Latin blessing. Alert eyes note it. He's arrested quietly, tried secretly, sentenced publicly. Stripped of habit, paraded through streets, then exiled to a leper colony. No execution, too messy for brothers in Christ, but near certain death by disease. The message is clear: break vows, rot slowly. Meanwhile, financial war escalates. The Hospitallers innovate credit letters redeemable in any Mediterranean port. Merchants love the convenience. Teutonic bankers feel threatened. They retaliate by offering lower interest loans to northern kings. Hospitallers counter with indulgence certificates, promising partial remission of sins with every deposit. Indulgence banking, spiritual futures trading. Popes alternately condemn and endorse the schemes, depending on who gifts more relics. Eventually, a joint papal bull tries to standardize Crusader finance, but loopholes outnumber paragraphs. You, now senior notary, file revisions until parchment stacks tower taller than a halberd.
Late at night, you wonder, does anyone fight Saracens anymore? Or is the real crusade waged in ledgers? A rat scurries across the scriptorium desk, nibbling candle drips. You flick it away, muttering that even vermin choose safer battlegrounds.
Rhodes again, 1371. Ottoman cannons test fortress walls. Hospitallers send frantic appeals to every Christian monarch. Aid trickles, but Teutonic silver arrives fastest, unexpected blessing. A relief fleet sails, emblazoned with black crosses. On board, German engineers teach Rhodian masons to reinforce bastions with angled stone, a technique borrowed from Baltic castles. Joint prayers echo through the chapel, the first sincere harmony in decades. Yet backstage, Hospitaller accountants haggle shipping reimbursements down to each nail. Gratitude has a ledger. Siege lifts temporarily. Celebrations fill the harbor. Teutonic and Hospitaller brothers feast together, swapping war stories. A minstrel improvises a ballad about unity. For a moment, grudges fade under fireworks of shared survival. But dawn reveals graffiti carved on a barrack door. Rhodes thanks Marienburg, interest payable in souls. Joke? Prophecy? Either way, laughter at breakfast tastes bitter. Time quickens. 138-9, Kosovo Field, Ottoman victory reverberates. Christian princes blame one another. Teutonic chroniclers accuse Balkan wards of cowardice. Hospitable letters warn Europe of impending doom. Feud temporarily pauses under looming crescent banners. Papal envoys propose a grand coalition, Tannenberg to Tarsus. Plans stall over command hierarchy. Hospitallers insist on naval leadership. Teutonics demand land command. French knights demand precedence by birth. Ottomans march while minutes are debated. History yawns. 1402, shock. Timur's hordes crush Ottomans at Ankara. Europe's sighs relief, returns to internal quarrels. Hospitallers refortify. Teutonics resume Baltic crusades. Cycle resets. Let's close with an echo you might not expect. Modern Malta, 2023. Tour guides in Valletta lead tourists through Hospitaller vaults, pointing out silver chalices stamped with 8-pointed crosses. Up in Poland, reconstructed Malbork Castle sells Teutonic chocolate. In Paris, luxury condos stand over the old temple site. The order's bones lie quiet, but their rivalries persist as branding. Museums argue over artifact loans. Cathedrals debate which relics are genuine. Even dead, the feud monetizes foot traffic and hashtags. And you, yes you on that couch, are part of the long aftershock. Each click, each comment fuels fresh takes, new documentaries, endless side quests for hidden gold. The medieval brothers wanted eternal remembrance. The algorithm obliges. Torches sputter, parchment ends. If you crave the grand finale, how these rivalries finally faded or maybe festered into Renaissance politics, pound subscribe and keep the bell singing. Drop your thoughts. Which scheme tonight impressed or horrified you most? And if sleep still eludes you, imagine ghostly Templar accountants whispering exchange rates into your dreams. Shuffle a little closer to the fire again. This next stretch of midnight gossip is hotter than the brazier under a siege cauldron. While you settle in, do the sacred threefold click. Like the video so the algorithm knights keep our banners flying. Subscribe so you never miss a single whispered conspiracy. And swear fealty in the comments by naming the order you would never join after tonight's confessions. Good? Helm visor down, heart rate up, because the feud is about to slip a dagger between the plates. Picture Venice, winter of 1411. Ice crystals feathering the Grand Canal. But inside the Doge's palace, it's humid with tension. Delegates in silk and mail crowd a map table littered with candied almonds and half-drained goblets. The Hospitallers want the Republic to finance a new squadron of galleys against Turkish corsairs. The Teutonics counteroffer to police Adriatic trade lanes in exchange for duty exemptions on Baltic amber. Venetian councillors juggle ledgers, trying to decide whose bribes feel more patriotic. You hover nearby, taking shorthand notes, now elevated to neutral chancery clerk, even though secretly you carry Hospitaller orders tucked in your doublet. A sly Teutonic envoy glides beside you and accidentally drops a vellum scrap, an itemized list of Hospitaller debts to Venetian bankers. You pretend not to see, but a senator snatches it, eyebrows climbing higher than the Rialto. In 10 heartbeats, negotiation momentum tilts. The Hospitaller spokesman reddens, mutters excuses about delayed remittances. The Teutonic envoy offers a courteous smile that could freeze seawater. After recess, the Hospitaller master corners you in a frescoed corridor scented with wet plaster. He hisses that someone has leaked their account books and demands a saboteur. You suggest the Teutonic envoy's drop. He shakes his head. Too obvious. Check the Franciscans. They hate our opulence. Your task shifts from minute-taking to mole hunt. Midnight finds you rifling through monastic pallets at a nearby friary, smelling hay, sweat, and, under one mattress, a sealed packet of correspondences. Break wax, unfold sheets, coded Teutonic cipher, but the address fields are in a friar's hand. Franciscans moonlighting as data couriers. Betrayal wears sandals. Come dawn, you scramble back to the Hospitaller residence, deliver evidence. They dispatch 2 lay brothers to the friary with polite letters of accusation. But the suspect friar has vanished, footprints leading toward the arsenal. Word later reaches you. A small cog sailed at first light, crew swearing they carried only grain. Grain, sure, grain wrapped in parchment, headed for Lubeck. Skew west to the Iberian Peninsula. Castile, 1414, dusty plains humming with locusts. The Order of Santiago, Spanish militia monks, have risen in prestige after kicking Nasrid raiders back across the frontier. Their Grand Master now craves pan-European respect. So he invites Hospitaller and Teutonic observers to a triumphal tournament outside Toledo. Jousting lists glow with heraldry. Hospitaller lances arrive tipped with gilded thistles, subtle jab that Spanish knights ride like donkeys. Teutonic champions turn up wearing capes sewn from lynx pelts, flaunting Baltic exoticism. The Santiagans try playing mediators, but rivalry is a wildfire. In the melee, a Hospitaller strikes a Teutonic helm with the flat instead of tip, an insult implying the target is unworthy of a lethal thrust. The German retaliates by unhorsing the brother, then parading the captured shield upside down. Spectators roar, tempers boil. After dusk, the Hospitallers plot retaliation. Not blood, but blasphemy by cuisine. They bribe a cook to slip pork fat into the Teutonics' Friday supper stew, violating fast day. Word reaches the Teutonic quarter minutes before serving. They ditch the bowls, march the cook outside, and pray penitential psalms so loud half of Toledo wakes. Next morning, they accuse Hospitallers before the Archbishop, labeling them gluttons courting damnation. The Archbishop, himself partial to Hospitaller hospitals in Seville, smiles serenely and fines both orders for public scandal, pocketing a tidy sum for cathedral renovations. Rivalry is tax revenue in ecclesiastical hands. Now to Paris, 1420. The Armagnac-Burgundian Civil War fractures France, and every foreign order angles to back the winning faction. Teutonic envoys fund Burgundian artillery. Hospitallers discreetly supply Armagnac cavalry medics. You, disguised as a parchment peddler, run messages between Hospitallers' safe houses. In a tavern shadow, you overhear a Burgundian spy boasting that he's purchased maps of every Hospitaller commandery in Normandy from an English captain newly home from Agincourt. Next night, you board a barge up the Seine, carrying barrels labeled salt herring, actually stuffed with Hospitaller ledgers you're instructed to burn if seized. Fog thickens. Another skiff drifts alongside, crew silent. Hook grips rail. Masked men climb over. They cut the steersman's throat so quick, no splash sounds. You wrestle a lantern, swing wildly, ignite spilled brandy. Fire leaps, barrels pop. You dive into freezing river, clutching only a water-warped cipher sheet. Crawling onto muddy bank, you hear the skiff retreating. Your barge splinters, flaming wreck lighting the fog like hellmouth. Paris awakes to rumors. Teutonic sabotage of Hospitaller supply run. Armagnac plot gone wrong. English ghosts on the river. Nobody knows truth. Everyone blames someone else. Mistrust fattens. March north to the Hanseatic port of Danzig, 1424. Teutonic knights levy heavy tolls on grain ships. Hospitaller merchants protest. They need wheat for Rhodian garrisons. Negotiations stall. A Hospitaller captain bribes dock clerks to mislabel his holds as Pilgrim's Charity, exempt cargo. Teutonic inspectors board, discover sacks of barley disguised under rosaries. They impound vessel, arrest crew. Hospitaller Grand Commander lodges a formal grievance to the Holy Roman Emperor, citing obstruction of crusading logistics. Teutonic diplomats retort that false pilgrims undermine sacred truth. Emperor Sigismund convenes an imperial diet. You attend as minor translator, juggling Latin, Middle Low German, Occitan. Proceedings drag. Hospitaller envoy dramatically places a blood-stained tunic on the dais, allegedly from a Rhodian sentry starved after the barley seizure. Teutonic marshal counters by unrolling a tattered banner taken from Lithuanian pagans, claiming Hospitaller smugglers sold grain to heathens. The assembly murmurs. Sigismund sighs, signs a decree creating an oversight commission staffed by Dominican auditors, meaning lords can stall indefinitely while earning per diems. Everybody loses except the Domina coins. Slide east to Rhodes again, 1429. Ottoman Sultan Murad II plots fresh sieges. Hospitaller walls hum with hammer blows, new bastions rising. Funds thin. Rumor floats that the Teutonic Order will dispatch cannons as goodwill. Hospitallers skeptical. Generosity often hides hooks. Cannons arrive, majestic bronze beasts, snarling lion mouths. During first test firing, one gun cracks, explodes, killing 3 gunners. A Teutonic foundry mark visible on the breach births talk of sabotage. A Hospitaller smith examines fragments, mutters that impurities in bronze suggest counterfeit origin, may be subcontracted to Hungarian artisans without Teutonic oversight. Teutonic engineers protest innocence, blaming humid Rhodian climate for metal fatigue. Hospitaller House debates whether to demand replacements or launch vendetta. Siege imminent, time scarce. They decide to melt the shards into arrowheads, symbolic transformation of betrayal into defense. Still, the list of grievances lengthens like a drum roll.
Zoom to Rome, dawn of 1435. New Pope Eugenius IV hopes to broker unity. He hosts a grand mass, invites masters of every military order, plus Franciscan mediators. Choirs echo, incense rolls. You, now seasoned agent, are posted in the sacristy copying draft treaties. The document seeks to establish a permanent council coordinating Crusader efforts, standardizing rank protocols, and, crucially, dividing pilgrimage alms for fairness. It reads like utopia. During recess, you sneak into a side chapel to breathe away ink fumes. There, you catch a Hospitaller inquisitor and a Teutonic preceptor trading sealed pouches. Coins? No, wax tablets etched with shipping coordinates. They swap them simultaneously, nod, vanish opposite doors. Information exchange. Barter of secrets neither order would admit. At signing ceremony, both masters pledge unity. The crowd applauds. Bells peal. That night, you find the treaty copies already stained with wine rings and marginal notes calculating acceptable deviation from agreed tithe percentages. Paper peace, ledger war. But cracks in chivalry soon widen into an earthquake. 1444, Varna Crusade ends in Christian catastrophe. Hospitallers lose galleys, Teutonics lose prestige. Survivors limp home famished. Each order blames the other for inadequate support. Hospitaller chroniclers write that Teutonic banners broke first. Teutonic scribes depict Hospitallers abandoning a critical ridge. Monasteries copy texts, circulate them. In Nuremberg, murals depict Teutonic heroism. In Naples, frescoes paint Hospitallers luminous and Germans skulking. Art as artillery. European princes reading conflicting accounts throw up hands. Why finance feuding zealots? Donations plummet. Orders face insolvency. Desperation forces dialogue. Rhodes, 1450. An unprecedented private dinner. Hospitaller Grandmaster and Teutonic Grandmaster alone in a vaulted chamber. Just you recording minutes. No entourages, no scribes save your quill. Candles flicker, wax pools like molten gold. They sip watered wine, stare at each other like duelists too weary to draw. Hospitaller. We bleed to defend Christians while merchants hoard coin. Teutonic. We bled too, your chronicles forget. Silence except distant surf. They speak of sermons that once ignited boys to crusade, now shrugged off. They confess fear, not of Turks, but of oblivion. You realize rivalry fueled purpose. Without it, identity dims. An accord forms. Joint training of young recruits on roads each spring, alternating instructors. Shared armories cataloged transparently. Rotating chaplains preaching humility over hubris. You ink every clause, wondering if parchment can bind hearts. At sunset, they exchange relics.
a Rhodian saint's finger bone for a Prussian martyr's splintered shield boss. Symbolic swap of guardianship. They clasp forearms, gesture older than both orders. For once, sincerity radiates. Fast forward to the Siege of Rhodes, 1480. When Ottoman armada darkens horizon, banners of both orders flutter side by side atop bastions. You, aged yet still scribbling, hear cannonade shake stones, but inside infirmary, Teutonic medics tend hospitaler wounded, and vice versa. A young sergeant jokes that arguing over soup spices is the only feud left. Shells crash, dust chokes laughter. Siege breaks, city stands. Joint victory ballads sweep Europe, reviving donations. The feud that once drained coffers now becomes legend, useful for cautionary sermons about pride. Yet whispers persist among novices. Never trust a Teutonic quartermaster, or hospitalers water their wine. Old habits outlive treaties. Centuries later, 1525, Teutonic order secularizes into Duchy of Prussia under Protestant Duke. Hospitallers, now Knights of Malta, remain Catholic. New schism eclipses old feud. Protestant pamphlets sneer at papist pirates, while Maltese captains deride heretic hawkers. The wheel turns, spokes change, axle squeaks the same tune. You retire to Malta's limestone citadel, pen memoirs that no publisher will risk, too incendiary. Your parchments smell of sea brine and wax, edges nibbled by silverfish. Before final candle gutters, you add one note. Rivalry sustained us, unity saved us. Both truths can dwell together. You seal pages in iron coffer, instruct novices to open only if tomorrow forgets yesterday. And here we are, screen aglow, scrolling through centuries like turning rosary beads. If tonight's chronicle kept your eyelids hovering but your mind racing, remember, history's loudest battles aren't always on blood-soaked fields. Sometimes they lurk in account books, kitchen pots, or the hush of a confessional. Lean back in the chair, loosen your gorget, and tap that like button as deftly as a Milanese swordsmith tapping gold wire into a pummel. Subscribe if your heart's set on more midnight intrigue, and in the comments, swear which knightly oath you'd break first for a pouch of florins. Honor, obedience, or chastity. Candlelight flickers? Good. Let's crack open the coffer of the later centuries, where jealousy aged like wine into something far more intoxicating and volatile. Picture Malta, 1565, 2 decades after the Teutonics morphed into Protestant dukes and the Ottoman crescent looms again like a storm front. The Knights of St. John, now styled the Knights of Malta, brace for the Great Siege. On a wind-scoured bastion above Grand Harbor, Grand Master Jean de Valette studies troop rosters. Beside him stands a visitor rarely admitted to these ramparts, Fray Rodrigo de Reboledo, emissary of Spain's once mighty but now debt-gasping Order of Calatrava. Calatravans, born in Castile's Reconquista, should be natural allies, yet centuries of rivalry simmer beneath their ceremonial capes. They resent Maltese control of Mediterranean charity revenues. The Maltese consider Spanish orders rustic relics. Rebolledo's mission? Offer 200 veteran lancers for a price. Permanent seats on Malta's governing council and rights to a slice of every captured corsair prize. Valette, seasoned in both diplomacy and dagger play, replies with a thin smile. Brother, we defend Christendom without auctioning our walls. Rebelado counters with a sealed letter from King Philip II promising subsidies. Valet's fingers drum the parapet. He knows Philip's subsidies arrive as slowly as a penitent's pilgrimage, but open refusal could alienate Spain's fleet. He stalls by inviting the Calatravan envoy to dine in Fort St. Elmo's refectory, a building the Turks will soon pound to rubble. That supper is a carnival of passive aggression. Maltese knights brag of their new bastioned trace. Calatravans praise Spanish cannon founders. When sweet almond pastries arrive, hosts present knives stamped with Maltese crosses. Guests produce their own with tiny scallop shell hilts, Calatrava icons. Every slice scores a tally in an invisible duel. Night falls, thunder of Ottoman guns echoes across water. Rebelado climbs the battlements, stares toward the enemy camp, glittering with campfires. He whispers, "If Malta falls, Calatrava dies next, yet your brothers treat us like mendicants." You, scribal shadow at his elbow, note the tremor in his voice, pride cracking beneath existential dread. The siege will forge a fragile fraternity after enough blood is spilled. Shift north to Prague, 1582. Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II convenes a secret colloquy of chivalric orders to discuss the rising tide of heresies, and the Ottoman embassy camped brazenly outside the city walls. Participants: a Maltese bailiff, a Lutheran count formerly Teutonic, a Calatravan prior, and, curveball, a representative of the Order of St. Lazarus, famed for leper hospitals but now dabbling in espionage. The Lazarean, Brother Gabriel Donnet, presents Chartreuse Starlight, a ciphertext alleging Turkish agents have infiltrated every order via paid informants posing as armorers. He spreads sheets of Kabbalistic symbols across a parquet table. The Teuton-turned-Lutheran scoffs, calls it papist numerology. Maltese bailiff flips rune after rune, eyes narrowing. He recognizes the script from an intercepted Ottoman dispatch months prior. Suddenly, Lazarus's odd man out claim gains weight. Debate grows rabid. Should they create a pan-order intelligence bureau? The Calatravan prior opposes. Fearful Calatravan secrets, chronic arrears, questionable noble proofs might surface. Maltese bailiff agrees on need, but insists bureau be headquartered in Valletta. Teutonics demand neutral ground, maybe Bremen, safe behind Protestant walls. Deadlock. At midnight, the Lazarean invites you to a tower observatory above Prague Castle. Between star charts and distillation flasks, he unveils a glass vial, Venetian aqua fortis laced with crushed emerald, rumored to reveal hidden ink. He drips it onto the cipher. New words bloom. Lists of bribes paid to named commanders. Two names glow brightest, one Calatravan, one Maltese. You gulp. Alliance schemes founder on internal treachery. Brother Gabriel snaps shut the ledger. Truth is uglier than heresy, he murmurs, handing you tinder and flint. Flames curl pages to ash. Loyalty to no order, only to the crusade, he claims. But whose? The stars above offer no answer, merely cold, impartial glimmers. West again, France, 1608. Wars of religion hush to simmering tension. The Jacobin friars in Paris mount sermons damning knightly extravagance. Public opinion sours on idle sword monks. The Order of the Holy Spirit, lavish, royal, little loved, hosts a fete to restore its reputation. Free bread to paupers, jousting for nobles, relic exhibition for pilgrims. To outshine them, the Lazarus Knights plan their own spectacle, a mock naval skirmish on the Seine, complete with fireworks. Maltese envoys attend incognito, keen to learn pyrotechnic tricks for coastal defense. Calatravans send no official delegate, too broke for travel. But a Spanish captain under false colors mingles, gauging prospects for French alliances against Dutch privateers. During rehearsal, a barge packed with saltpeter ignites prematurely. Boom reverberates through Paris, windows shatter, spectators plunge into river. In the chaos, a Maltese observer rescues drowning actors, while Lazarus stewards scramble to contain flames. Next day, Paris broadsheets proclaim, "Foreign knights endanger citizenry." Royal Council fines both orders, pockets the funds for expansion of the Louvre arsenal. Behind court drapes, Holy Spirit Knights accuse Lazarus showmen of amateur incompetence. Lazarus brothers retort that Holy Spirit saboteurs altered fuse lengths to sabotage rivals. No proof, but rumors multiply. Donations shrink, reputations bleed. You, disguised as a street poet, compose satirical verses blaming both, pin them to tavern doors. Nights later, Lazarus Captain hires you to trace authorship, never suspecting you. Double agenting becomes a profession. Feuds feed livelihoods. East to Rome again, 1623. New Pope Urban VIII, Baroque patron and nepotist supreme, schemes to harness chivalric orders for papal finances. He summons grand masters, unveils a decree. Orders must tithe 10% of all rents to a central crusade fund. Maltese envoy blanches. This could sink warship upkeep. Calatravan messenger pales. They barely collect enough for monastery roofs. Negotiations heated. Maltese propose exemption for orders maintaining frontline fortresses. Calatravans claim their aging castles in La Mancha count. Lazarus advocates blanket exemption for hospital costs. The papal secretary, Cardinal Barberini, listens, strokes beard, announces compromise. Orders may purchase indulgence from the tithe at lavish rate. Essentially, pay more now to pay nothing later. You witness side deals in palace corridors. A Maltese treasurer slides gold to a cardinal's valet. Next morning, their assessment halves. Calatravans, short on cash, pledge future wheat shipments, arriving years late, infested by weevils. Lazarus pays in exquisite apothecary glasswork. Cardinals accept, reorder more. Publicly, orders declare unity with papal vision. Privately, ledger resentment deepens. Each suspects others of lighter burdens. Spies infiltrate each chancery, copying tithe receipts. Soon pamphlets leak. Maltese buy salvation. Spaniards starve widows. Lazarus sells leper beds. Feuds weaponize moral outrage. Recruits to cause of whichever writer wields quill first. Step into 1641 London. Civil War brews. Protestant rhetoric slams Catholic orders as potential fifth column. English-born commanderies of the Lazarus Order face confiscation. Teutonic Prussian heirs, now Calvinist, lobby Parliament to spare holdings, arguing for religious neutrality and medical charity. Lazarus lawyers cite centuries of leper care, but Puritan zeal wins. Property seized, revenues redirected to parliamentarian war chest.
Across the Channel, Maltese flotilla preys on English merchants out of revenge, cloaked as corsair suppression. Captains fly red flag with white cross, iconic terror on high seas. English survivors rant in coffee houses that Malta pirates collude with Irish papists. Rumor loops back to Valletta, where knights drink captured Madeira and toast stirring the pot of heresy.
Calatravans, observing from distant Spain, fear trade retaliation. They petition Philip IV to condemn Maltese piracy. Spanish king, entangled in 30 years' war debts, signs a tepid letter. Malta ignores it, but Calatravans trumpet the royal rebuke, claiming moral high ground over outlaw corsair brethren. Malice disguised as righteousness. In feudal liturgy, that's verse 1. Northern shift again. Stockholm, 1654. Queen Christina of Sweden, eccentric and newly fascinated by Catholic mysticism, hosts a secret colloquy with Jesuit advisors and, unexpectedly, envoys of the now defunct Teutonic line, seeking to found a chivalric academy blending Protestant discipline with Catholic ritual. Christina's court buzzes. Is she converting? Is she forging a new order?
Maltese and Lazarus agents attend masked balls, spying. Calatravans send no one, but a Spanish Jesuit smuggles letters. Christina eventually abdicates, rides to Rome, converts openly, leaving Swedish nobles aghast. Plans collapse, but notes of her academy blueprint fall into your hands. Curriculum mixing fencing, astronomy, and alchemical prayer.
You sell copies to all three orders. Each tries adapting pieces. Maltese incorporate star navigation into cadet training. Lazarus open alchemical labs. Calatravans toy with Protestant sword drills but drop them, fearing Inquisition suspicion. Shared source, divergent paths, sparks new rivalry. Whose reformed program better prepares Christian knights for modern age? 1669. Last large Ottoman siege of Crete, Candia. Malta dispatches war galleys. Calatrava offers troops but fails to secure transport. Lazarus Medical Corps sails aboard French frigates. On Crete's battered walls, surgeons of rival orders share cramped trenches, swapping scalpels in bombardment lull. Bullets ignore uniforms. Blood stench equalizes grudges. After capitulation, surviving knights march to ships under truce. Maltese Commodore grants Lazarus doctors safe passage, praising their courage. Calatravan captain, arriving late, finds only scorched docks. He accuses Malta of abandoning Spanish brethren. Maltese reply, "We waited 3 days." Official logs differ. Spain's Cortes debates censure, but plague ravages Madrid. Distraction prevails. You, recovering from dysentery in Valletta Hospital, overhear sailors recounting Crete tales, each embellishing heroism of their own flag, villainy of others. Feud persists, embalmed in bar-side ballads. Finally, Vienna, 1683. Coalition armies brace for decisive battle. Banners of Malta, Calatrava, relic detachments, and Lazarus field surgeons flutter under King John Sobieski's command. This culmination could bury centuries of petty feud. During Council of War, Maltese commander kneels, offers prized relic, St. George's thumb, to inspire united host. Calatravan Grand Prior matches gesture, producing a splinter of the true cross. Lazarus surgeon unfurls linen bearing crimson handprint of Saint Lazarus. Relic measuring contest ensues until Polish king laughs, declares their combined faith sufficient. On Kahlenberg Heights, cavalry thunders. Maltese volunteers hold artillery readouts. Calatravans rally shattered lines. Lazarus surgeons triage in makeshift chapels. Victory rings out, Vienna saved. In jubilant mass, they chant Te Deum together. For a heartbeat, feud melts into incense smoke. But history seldom offers permanent peace. Post-battle, nobles debate distribution of Ottoman spoils. Maltese demand captured cannon, citing artillery losses at Rhodes a century prior. Calatravans claim silken tents for churches bankrupted by war. Lazarus asks for exotic medicines from Ottoman field chests. Haggling eclipses heroism within days. The wheel resets. Gratitude curdles to grievance. Chivalric carousel spins anew. Pause whatever multitasking app has you doom scrolling. Give that like button a courteous tilt of your visor, and if you haven't subscribed yet, consider it your night service fee, paid in a single click instead of 50 years of feudal dues. While you're tapping, draft me a comment. Which century of skulking intrigue has been juiciest so far? And which order you'd infiltrate if someone shoved a gilded dagger and forged patent of nobility into your hand tonight? All set? Let the torchlight flicker. Let the parchment crackle. We ride straight into the 18th century, where powdered wigs can't hide rusting chainmail, and ancient feuds smolder beneath Enlightenment chatter like embers under silk carpets. London, 1717. Coffee houses overflow with pamphlets preaching Newtonian physics, but step through an oak-paneled back door and you'll find Sir Marmaduke Hollis, Knight of the Order of St. Lazarus, declaiming about miasmatic effluvia as if germ theory were a pagan superstition. Across from him lounges Chevalier Etienne de la Tour, freshly arrived Maltese novice, boots still dusty with Mediterranean salt. They sip Turkish coffee, imported by Smyrna merchants the Maltese once captured, and fence with words. Hollis boasts that Lazarus clinics in Naples pioneered cinchona bark infusions against fevers. De la Tour counters, Malta funds bloodletting wards aboard galleys. Bleeding begins the moment a wounded corsair is hauled over the rail. Efficiency incarnate. Gentlemen in periwigs murmur. A mock wager is struck. They'll treat 20 feverish dock workers, half with Lazarus bark tonic, half with Maltese inisection. Winner receives a silver astrolabe on display behind the bar. You volunteer as impartial observer, secretly subsidized by Calatrava, still cash-strapped after Spain's War of Succession, but keen to sabotage both rivals. Day 1, bark patients sweat miserably. Bloodletting patients swoon pale as parchment. Day 3, bark cohort up and about, singing bawdy sea shanties. Bleeders languish like wilted lilies. De la Tour curses under breath, ships in extra oranges, claims scurvy skewed results. Sir Marmaduke smirks, accepts the astrolabe, but you pocket a more valuable prize. Notes on Maltese medical failures, prime blackmail fodder for Calatravan coffers. The pamphleteers have a field day. Maltese barber surgeons bleed men to death, screams one broadside. Valletta's chancery sends furious letters accusing British printers of heresy and libel. Lazarus propagandists leak new tracts. Cinchona, God's bark or devil's powder, stirring fear of witchcraft. In trying to win a coffeehouse bet, both orders trigger an Atlantic rumor pandemic that will haunt recruiting drives for decades. Flip the map south to Cadiz, 1733. The Spanish Bourbons, flush from silver fleets, wish to revive Calatrava's faded luster. They fund a grand naval procession, 12 galleons, each bearing relics and banners of a Spanish military order, to sail round Iberia displaying Catholic might. Malta, threatened, dispatches a sloop commanded by Captain Bartolomeo Ricasoli with orders: shadow the parade and record any artillery misfires, rigging failures, or instances of sailors drunk on communion wine, ammunition for gossip war. On the third dawn off Cape St. Vincent, fog smothers sea, and Calatrava flagship Santa Iria runs aground on a sandbar. Maltese sloop ghosts nearer. Ricasoli's quartermaster sketches the spectacle: frantic Spaniards tossing anchors, friars shrieking psalms. Ricasoli, perhaps bloodthirsty for ridicule, unleashes his boatswain's whistle and leads his crew in a faux chanty. Sand claims the holy, sand claims the bold. Spaniards here vow vengeance. Santa Iria frees herself at high tide, guns swiveling, but rules of pilgrimage prohibit Christian on Christian fire. Instead, they fling insults in Castilian thicker than grape shot. You, disguised as a Genoese salt merchant aboard Calatrava's supply ketch, witness scribes hurriedly revising ship logs, grounding blamed on incarnate demons of mist, not navigational error. Those logs later reach Madrid, where court astrologers confirm portent. A pamphlet writer in Seville spins it, proof God dislikes showy Catholic militarism. Protestants across Europe snicker, Bourbon prestige sags. Calatrava blames Maltese heckling for the cosmic insult. Malta retorts that Spanish pride beached the ship. Neither sees the shadow of Lazarus friars quietly buying up seized Ottoman spice cargo at half price while the others feud. Leap to Turin, 1745. Savoy's palace glittered with Enlightenment salons, but its dungeons remained medieval. A young Piedmontese noble, Countess Julia d'Este, funds an experimental chivalric library, volumes on gunnery, fortification, anatomy. She invites representatives from every order to donate texts and debate a universal knightly code. Maltese envoy furnishes treatise on carronades. Lazarus surgeon gifts leather-bound pharmacopoeia. Calatravan monk submits dusty chronicle of Reconquista sieges. Day of unveiling, the chronicle's clasp springs open to reveal not parchment, but hollow cavity crammed with letters. Private Calatravan correspondence hinting at secret negotiations with Freemasons. Countess, scandalized, locks it away, invites you, now acting archivist, to catalog. Word leaks. Spanish Inquisition, reanimated by Bourbon paranoia, demands extradition of Calatravan monk. Savoy refuses. Malta snickers publicly, but privately frets. If inquisitors sniff out Masonic ties, they may probe Maltese lodges. Half the Grand Harbor Fleet officers dabble in alchemy and square and compass sigils. Lazarus sees opportunity to appear spotless. Their envoy drafts a memorandum on transparency in orders, presenting it to the Pope. But Brotherhood of the Holy Sepulchre, minor order, sabotages by forging references to heliocentrism being Satan's gyroscope. Memo becomes heretical hot potato. Julia dissolves her library. Knights retreat to whisper behind tapestries once more. Your pay? One Masonic cipher wheel lifted from the Chronicle. You sell copies in Amsterdam. Protestant printers make posters titled "Papist Orders Conspire with the Compass." Europe's reading public laps it up, proving again, feud plus fear equals profit. Now, Paris again, 1762. Jesuits expelled, Jansenists jubilant, philosophers tip quills. Baron d'Holbach ridicules relic cults. Voltaire flames knights as antique marionettes dangled by bishops. Orders scramble for rebranding. The Lazarus Grand Master hires architect Soufflot to design a neoclassical hospital facade, all Greek austerity, no Gothic gargoyles. Malta commissions portraitist Vigée Lebrun to paint young chevaliers sans armor, dressed like Enlightenment scientists with pocket telescopes. Calatrava, clinging to medieval pageantry, stages a grand auto cavalcade in Madrid. They ride destriers through city gates in full mail, while children pelt them with orange peels, shouting "dinosaurs." Press mocks them as rusty tin men. Spanish court realizes marketing failure, quietly orders Calatrava to modernize uniforms. Secret committee proposes blue silk coats with embroidered crosses. Expensive, effeminate to old guard. A fistfight erupts in Chapter House. Mail outweighs silk, but silk supporters wield steel fans with sharpened ribs. 2 knights wounded, duel arranged. Bourbon ministers exasperated. In Paris, Lazarus Hospital opens with fanfare. Maltese emissaries attend. Note patient wards spotless, but kitchens short on supplies. They donate barrels of Sicilian wheat to appear magnanimous and slip letters to French Navy Admiralty highlighting Lazarus cash shortage for ship hospitals. Months later, Admiralty awards lucrative maritime medical contract to Malta instead of Lazarus. Feud disguised as philanthropy. You, now ghostwriter for Diderot's Encyclopedia Supplement, insert snide cross-references. See also Chivalric Buffoonery, page 274. Sales soar. Enlightenment loves a fallen idol. North Sea, 1780. American Revolution drags Britain into naval attrition. Maltese privateers under covert French letters of marque raid British whalers. Calatrava debates joining Spanish Bourbon war effort but fears Gibraltar's guns. Lazarus supplies surgeons to French frigates Etincelle and Bravour. Off Dogger Bank, British convoy skirmish. Etincelle explodes after magazine hit. Maltese-rated whaler Isabella rescues survivors, including Lazarus surgeons. Aboard whaler, Maltese corsair lieutenant questions Lazarus doctors about French fleet movements. Doctors refuse, citing Hippocratic secrecy. Lieutenant threatens to toss them to waves. Heated standoff ends when whaler captain, reluctant conscript, releases surgeons at Dutch Texel to avoid diplomatic hell. Lazarus Grand Master brands Malta sea jackals. Valletta retorts that Lazarus hides behind neutrality while French cannons kill Christian sailors. War correspondence escalates, but British propaganda turns it into comedic poem The Order's Quarrel, recited in taverns from Hull to Boston. You, humble printer in Leiden, translate poem into 8 languages, each edition slightly twisting blame so every region jeers a different order. It becomes 18th century viral content. Penniless but famed, you dine off free ale for recitations. Vienna Congress, 1815. Napoleon's fall shatters Europe. Mapmakers scribble new lines. Orders send aging delegates. Maltese bailiff missing an eye, souvenir from Trafalgar. Calatravan cannon crippled by gout. Lazarus commander carrying leather folio of property deeds. Agenda: reclaim land seized by revolutionary governments. But Tsar Alexander's court whispers, maybe orders obsolete, redirect their wealth to League of Nations-style security fund. British diplomats nod, they fear Catholic naval resurgence. Maltese marshal counters, order already homeless since Napoleon stole Malta in 1798. They deserve sovereign territory return. Calatravan canon pleads for Castilian estates. Spanish crown bankrupt supports. Lazarus commander simply requests tax-exempt status for hospitals. Delegates bicker. Prussian satirist pens caricature. 3 ancient birds squabbling over a worm labeled Europe's pity. Backhaul deal. Congress grants none lands, only ceremonial recognition. Malta relocates to Rome under papal wing. Calatrava relegated to Spanish court sinecure. Lazarus allowed to continue charity but stripped of military title. Feud, though neutered, mutates into argument over whose demotion least humiliating. You, now gray-haired but still scribbling, witness final signing. Maltese delegate shakes Calatravan's hand, a gesture stiff as ossified Latin. Lazarus commander embraces both, tears glistening. For a moment, fraternity. Outside carriage lamps sputter. You overhear Maltese aide whisper, "At least we still have our fleet tradition." Calatravan retorts, "Tradition without ships is ghosts." And so the carousel turns, old grievances rethreaded on new spindles. Take one steady breath, silence your Slack pings, and let that subscribe button feel the gentle tap of your armored gauntlet. Because even if the old nightly orders are wheezing into retirement, we still crave fresh quests, and your click is the dragon we get to slay today. While you're at it, comment below. If you had a time-spinning pocket watch and a free ticket to any century, would you rescue these fading brotherhoods from dusty irrelevance, or help history roll them flat beneath the iron wheels of progress? Cozy? Good. Lanterns down. Steam whistles up. We're plunging headfirst into the soot-streaked 19th century, where semaphore towers blink secrets across whole kingdoms, and telegram wires vibrate like metal webs, perfect threads for ancient grudges to skitter along faster than gossip in a convent bakery. The year is 1834. In the echoing train shed of Liverpool's Crown Street station, coal smoke swirls above curious onlookers who have never seen a locomotive pull more than wagons of raw cotton. A brass-buttoned station master pinches his nose against the sulfuric tang and then spots 3 unlikely passengers. Brother Benedict of the Lazarus Order, Chevalier Paolo Zamet from the homeless Rome-based Knights of Malta, and Don Carlos de Aranda Jimenezes, visorless but still unmistakably Calatravan thanks to a crimson sash hidden under his sober tailcoat. They're not here for sightseeing. They're here to test a rumor that messages sent along Stevenson's rails travel faster, cheaper, and farther than any courier on horseback or any spy cloaked in midnight secrecy. Benedict carries a folded pamphlet on the application of galvanic telegraphs. Zamet wields a tiny pocket chronometer. Don Carlos keeps a folded map marking every Jesuit college reopened in Spain since the Liberal Revolt. Intelligence Malta would pay to burn, and Lazarus would pay to publish. The trio climbs into a first-class carriage veneered with mahogany. Chuff-chuff, whistle screeches, and the train leaps. Benedict's quill scratches timestamps on a notebook. Departure 10:02. Zamet leans out, counting telegraph poles, gauging distance. Don Carlos hums a hymn, fingers brushing the map like a rosary. They reach Manchester in 45 minutes, a speed that leaves horses obsolete. Telegraph clerk hands Benedict a slip. A ticker message sent at departure reached Manchester 8 minutes before the train. Benedict's eyebrows jump. Information is now faster than people. In that gap between message and arrival lies the new battlefield. The orders react within weeks. Malta revives its defunct code-breaking Secretariat of Ciphers, hiring sacked Napoleonic cryptographers. Lazarus founds a Committee for Humane Telegraphic Relief, proposing to transmit cholera outbreak data to remote hospitals. Calatrava, cash-strapped, petitions the Spanish crown to build telegraph relays across La Mancha for national defense. The Cortes laughs the request into oblivion. Don Carlos counters by courting British financiers, offering shares in hypothetical Iberian telegraph lines if they also underwrite Calatravan vineyard expansions. Clerks in London sniff profit, quills scratch. Feud version 19.0 has gone electric. Fast forward to Crimea, winter 1854. Allied tents flap near Balaclava. Fog hangs thick with frost and misery. Nightly, cannon thunder echoes across hills. But inside a timber hut warmed by a pot-bellied stove, surgeons from 3 orders gather around a telegraph key. Dr. Commander Antoine Dupré of Lazarus collects casualty numbers. Maltese chaplain surgeon Father Raphael Camilleri sends coded morale reports to Valletta. Calatravan field engineer Captain Jaime de Silva dispatches desperate supply requests to Madrid. They share coffee, but not trust. Tonight, a blizzard knocks down a French signal post. Telegraphs flicker. Camilleri seizes his chance. He changes one cipher group in the Calatravan supply message. 2,000 blankets becomes 200. In Madrid, days later, warehouses release wagons short by 1,800 blankets. 6 soldiers shiver. Spanish papers blame bureaucratic bungling. Calatrava fumes over sabotage, but lacks proof. Meanwhile, Lazarus, Dr. Dupré, transmits a plea for British chloroform. Miswired digits redirect the boxes to Maltese lines. Malta, detecting British insignia, claims logistical mislabel, keeps the anesthetic, and sends wine as apology. Soldiers joke that battle lines are colder than Muscovite winters. But the order's backroom skirmishes burn hot as Greek fire. You, embedded war correspondent, observe documents flickering in lamplight. You smuggle details to the Times. Chivalric quarreling threatens Allied medical corps. London readership gasps. Florence Nightingale herself pens a stinging letter condemning ancient jealousies in new uniforms. Within a month, the War Office forces all order personnel to wear neutral badges under British command, stamping out visible rivalry. Yet underground, the wires still hum with coded spite. The telegraph has become both leash and dagger. Paris, 1867. Universal Exposition. The city glitters with gaslights, wrought iron pavilions, and industrial marvels. The orders, sensing PR gold, erect adjacent kiosks on Esplanade des Invalides. Malta showcases scale models of their new steam-powered hospital ship, the Carita, promising floating clinics from Alexandria to Buenos Aires. Lazarus sets up a demonstration ward where visitors can peer through glass at aseptic surgery, a new word Joseph Lister whispers in smoky corners. Calatrava, unable to afford machinery, displays relics, battered swords allegedly dipped in the Guadalete River, and a 1480 war banner fringed with bullet holes from the Peninsular War. Crowds flock to Lazarus first. Surgery without pus is revolutionary. And to Malta second for Navy glamour. Calatrava's relics collect dust. Embarrassment breeds cunning. Don Carlos's grandson, Alvaro, now Calatravan deputy, purchases a crate of spoiled beef from a shady supplier. Under night fog, he bribes a cook in the Maltese pavilion to slip rancid slices into next day's tasting menu labeled Genoese salt beef, produced aboard Carita. Visitors nibble, stomachs revolt, rumors spread. Maltese hospital ship stores rotten provisions. Malta's press office panics, investors freeze checks. Meanwhile, Lazarus finds their alcohol burners missing, replaced by cracked kerosene lamps. Demonstration stinks of soot, driving away crowds. Detectives investigate. Exposé emerges. Feuding chivalric curators sabotage each other like fishwives at market. Emperor Napoleon III, craving harmony in his showcase fair, expels all 3 stalls. They pack crates amidst jeers from American industrialists who mutter, "So much for old world nobility." But Alvaro smirks. Share price of Malta's maritime bonds plummets. Calatrava quietly buys them cheap, using capital from hidden vineyards, finally profitable. Poisoned beef turns into golden wine. You, freelancing for Harper's Weekly, sketch caricatures, knights dueling with sausages and scalpels. Transatlantic readers love it. Your cartoon becomes telegram fodder. The feud goes global. Berlin, 1890. Chancellor Bismarck's Germany roars with steel mills and chemical patents. The knightly orders, stuck with medieval charters, risk extinction unless they pivot. Lazarus resolves to reinvent as Red Cross-style humanitarian corps. Malta eyes colonial nursing contracts, protect British troops from malaria in Africa. Calatrava, still Spanish, pins hopes on archaeological tourism, guiding railroad travelers through castles of La Mancha, reenacting swordplay at sunset. But first, public backing. All 3 hire publicists. They organize an international congress on Christian chivalry and modern service in Leipzig. Day 1, keynote glorifies unity. Day 2, disaster. Maltese delegate claims their quinine plantations in Ceylon outclass French Lazarus quinine syndicates grown in moldy hothouses. Lazarus retorts, Maltese bark adulterated with sawdust. Spanish Calatravan stands to mediate, then slyly promotes La Mancha wine as the only antidote to malarial gloom. Maltese delegate hurls glass. Wine splashes across Lazarus doctor's starched collar. Cameras click, plates flash. Next morning, Berliner Tageblatt headlines, Knights brawl like tavern thugs, not angels of mercy. Even Kaiser Wilhelm snickers. German parliamentary wags coin new phrase, Ritterstreit, night fight, describing any petty dispute hindering progress. Donations to all 3 orders nosedive. Desperate, they issue a joint apology telegram to world dailies, hand-signed by Grand Masters. Yet each order secretly circulates pamphlets pinning blame elsewhere. You, now editing a fledgling newswire, intercept copies. Story fuels another news cycle. Telegraph cables across oceans sigh under weight of their shame. Vienna, Christmas Eve 1913. Palace ballrooms echo waltzes, but beneath chandeliers, diplomats fear war clouds. Night's relevance teeters. Young nobles discuss automobiles, not destriers. Into this tension, the orders plan a last-ditch charity gala at the Hofburg. Proceeds to fund Balkan War orphans. Malta exhibits X-ray machine shipped from London. Lazarus shows prototype ambulance motor car. Calatrava offers a historical pageant featuring Toledo blade drills. Austro-Hungarian archdukes attend, press flock. Mid-Gala, a Serbian nationalist pamphlet floats among coats in the cloakroom. Down with Crusader relics, funds should aid Bosnian independence. Calatrava guard discovers Lazarus page skeins beside it, suspects foul play. Meanwhile, Austrian police claim to find Maltese courier carrying blank passports. Rumor wheel spins. Are orders smuggling insurgents? Feuds suspicion merges with nationalist paranoia. Gala cut short. Donations evaporate. 6 months later, Archduke Franz Ferdinand lies dead in Sarajevo. World War ignites. Governments commandeer resources. Nightly orders drafted into Red Cross auxiliaries under strict state control. Ancient autonomy gone overnight. Malta's hospital ship Carità, modernized with turbines, now sails under British Admiralty flag. Lazarus Ambulance Corps wears neutral Red Cross on white. Order insignia forbidden. Calatrava's pageant swords melted into bayonets for Spanish neutrality reserves. On muddy fronts, members of rival orders work side by side, uniforms scrubbed of feudal badges. Feuds pauses, not forgiven, merely buried under artillery barrages. You, trench correspondent, witness Lazarus, doctor patch, Maltese stretcher bearer wounded by gas. No insult exchanged, just nods. Under shellfire, petty vendettas look like candle flames in a hurricane. Armistice, 1918. Europe staggers, map redrawn, monarchies toppled. Versailles hallways reek of ink, sweat, and fresh paint covering bullet holes. Orders send skeleton delegations seeking legal recognition, like NGOs. League of Nations committees, obsessed with self-determination and quarantine treaties, view Crusader backstories as embarrassing fossils. Malta pleads for permission to manage Mediterranean refugee clinics. Lazarus argues they already operate typhus hospitals in Poland. Calatrava, landless, nearly penniless, requests tax exemption for vineyards now ravaged by phylloxera. League files requests in subcommittee drawer. Final resolution? Orders allowed to exist only as charitable associations, military privileges extinguished. Feuds embers flicker one last time at Le Train Bleu restaurant, Gare de Lyon. Delegates meet for farewell supper. Maltese commander accuses Lazarus of blocking clinic charter. Lazarus snaps Calatrava betrayed them to Spanish clergy opposing League treaties. Calatrava protests innocence, blaming grape blight and God's judgment. After 5 courses and much burgundy, anger fades into laughter, because their titles, once thunder, now echo like stage props. They toast to irrelevance with watery grins. You, nearby journalist, scribble final note. When ancient knights stop brawling, perhaps the world can heal. Headline never runs. Papers chase stock crashes and influenza statistics. The orders slip into footnotes. Decades roll. 1950s. Television beams soccer matches, not jousts. Jetliners shrink oceans. Nuclear missiles dwarf crossbows. The Knights of Malta reinvent yet again. Now sovereign military hospitaller order, dispatching doctors after earthquakes. Lazarus merges into St. John Brigade units, ambulances flashing neon lights, not heraldic chevrons. Calatrava survives mostly as Spanish honorific fraternity, dispensing scholarships to engineering students, ironically funding designs for telecom satellites, the ultimate artillery of information. The feud? A half-remembered anecdote, revived occasionally when archivists stumble on coffee-stained pamphlets or when reenactors stage comedic skits of sausage-throwing chevaliers. Yet you and I know the vein of rivalry never truly dried. It simply migrated into boardrooms, branding strategies, maybe Twitter spats if the orders ever secure blue check marks. So here, under the soft glow of LED screens instead of torches, what lingers? Perhaps the lesson that institutions, like people, cling hardest to pride when the world sprints ahead. The electric wire, steam engine, X-ray tube, they were all mirrors reflecting the order's refusal to shed old armor. In that refusal, we glimpse our own, whenever we clutch nostalgia tighter than possibility. If the clang of swords turned to telegraph clicks, the hiss of steam, and finally the silent hum of fiber optic lines kept you wide-eyed through this entire saga, you, my friend, are a champion of long-form nerdiness. Smash that subscribe bell like a gravy-soaked tavern bench during a night fight. Give the video a thumbs up big enough to rival Malta's floating hospitals. And drop me a comment. In the grand tug of war between tradition and reinvention, where do you plant your banner? Thanks for riding from Crusader keeps to telegraph booths to trench hospitals with me. Now get some sleep. Dream of rusted mail melting into radio waves, and I'll see you in the next midnight dive through boring history for sleep.